Well, there you are. Pull that blanket up and settle in. Get yourself comfortable now. There's no rush. It's a good night to just be still for a while. The world's still out there doing whatever it does, but that's got nothing to do with you right now. You've done enough today. More than enough, I'd wager. So, let's just sit together a spell and let the evening do its thing. Got myself a cup of chamomile tonight. Made it a little stronger than I probably should have. Old habit. It's a fine autumn night out there, dry and still, the kind where the air has a little bite to it if you step outside, but not so cold that it's unpleasant, just bracing. Just enough to remind you that the season has made up its mind, that particular in-between time of year that I've always had a fondness for. Things slowing down, the world getting quieter in a way that it earns every October. The leaves are down from most of the trees now, the branches showing through, the sky bigger than it was a month ago, opening up the way it does when there's less between you and it. If you're just finding your way here for the first time tonight, I'll tell you how this works. You just settle in, get comfortable. Let the voice do what it does. Some folks are asleep before we're 5 minutes along, and that's perfectly fine. That's the whole idea, really. You don't have to follow along. You don't have to hold on to any of it. Just let it wash over you the way a slow river washes over things, without asking anything in return. If you've been here before and you find yourself wanting to come back, well, there's a little button somewhere on your screen that lets you do that. I'm told that's how this works. I'm also told it helps the channel considerably, which seems worth mentioning once in a while, in the grandpa way of mentioning things. And one more thing before we get started tonight. I've been wondering where everybody's listening from. Not looking for a long answer, just what time is it where you are? Leave it in the comments if the spirit moves you. I'll have a look in the morning. All right. I've been thinking tonight about a trip I took a long time ago. For work, if you can believe it. Back when taking something to a client meant driving it there yourself. You put on a good shirt and you put the presentation in a portfolio under your arm and you drove. No emails, no video calls. The fax machine was still considered something of a marvel, the kind of thing people pointed out to each other. The internet was something that didn't exist yet, or existed only in the minds of a few people in universities who hadn't told anyone else about it. You went to the client. You sat across the table from them. You showed them what you'd made. That was just how it was done. I was working at a print shop in those days. Designer. We did everything by hand. The paste up, the mechanicals, all of it. Careful, deliberate work. You had to be patient with it. There was no undoing things quickly. If you made a mistake, you dealt with the mistake. I've thought since that it was probably good for me, that kind of work. Teaching you to slow down and look carefully before you commit to something. This would have been the late 70s. I drove out to Oklahoma on a Tuesday for a meeting on Wednesday morning, which went well enough. Good enough anyway, the way most meetings go when you've done the preparation and the people on the other side are reasonable. There was a handshake and some talk about next steps and coffee and paper cups, and then I was in the car with the rest of Wednesday afternoon in front of me and nothing pressing until I got home. That's when I stopped at Cutler's. I should tell you something about Oklahoma in October because it matters to this story. Most people who haven't spent real time there think of it as flat. And it is flat. There are stretches of it where the horizon goes out so far and sits so level that it doesn't seem quite real, like a decision someone made rather than something that happened on its own. But flat doesn't mean empty, and it doesn't mean without character. What flat means out there is that the sky gets to do whatever it wants. And in October, what the sky wants to do is go orange. It starts in the west in the late afternoon, this deep amber color, almost the color of a good fire that's been burning for a while and settled into itself, and it spreads. The clouds catch it and go pink, and then a kind of deep rose, and then purple. And because the land is wide and open and not interrupted by much, you see all of it, every single bit of it. You're not looking through a gap in the buildings or over somebody's roof line. The whole sky is right there in front of you, laid out like it was arranged, like somebody wanted to make sure you got the full effect. The grass along the road in October is dry, gone from green to that golden color that in certain low light is almost silver. The fields have given up their crops, and what's left is stubble, pale and tidy, and at rest. And there's a smell to the air that I've never been able to name exactly, something dry and clean, almost like wood smoke, but not quite, like the land itself is exhaling after the long work of summer, letting go of something. You know it when you're in it. You don't forget it either. Years later, if you smell something even close to it, you're right back there, standing in a field in October with the amber sky overhead. I was on Route 66 because that was the sensible way between the 2 points I was traveling, or at least for a stretch of it. The interstate existed already, of course, but 66 was faster for a particular part of the drive, and I knew the road. There's a comfort in knowing a road. It asks less of you than a strange one does. You can let your mind wander a little. The meeting had gone well enough. The client was a family print house, third generation, careful people who thought about things before they said them. They'd liked what we'd brought. There was a handshake and some warm words and the coffee in the paper cups, and then I was back in the car with the portfolio on the back seat and the afternoon wide open. I wasn't in a hurry. That's the thing I keep coming back to when I think about that day, not in a hurry at all. The work was done. The car was running well. The sky was doing its October thing in every direction. I rolled the window down about 2 inches and let the air come in, that cool, dry air with the smell of the fields in it. And I just drove. There is a specific pleasure in driving when you have nowhere urgent to be. I don't think we talk about it enough. The car becomes a kind of room, a small moving room with everything you need and nothing you don't. The miles go by and they don't cost you anything. You're not burning time, exactly. You're in it, present inside it in a way that's hard to be when you're behind a desk or in a meeting room or on the phone. The road asks for a particular kind of attention, not intense, not anxious, just steady and forward, and everything else gets to wait. I wasn't thinking about much. Maybe the meeting, a little, turning over a few of the things the client had said, the way you do after a conversation, not analyzing it, just letting the words finish settling somewhere inside you, wondering idly whether to take the highway all the way home or cut across through the smaller roads, whether I'd stop somewhere for supper or push through and eat at home. It occurred to me, somewhere along there, that this was one of the things I didn't mind about business travel, the particular freedom of the long drive home after the work is done. You've done the thing you came to do. You're nobody's problem for the next 3 or 4 hours. The car goes where you point it, and the radio plays whatever it plays. and the world gets to be simple for a while. The radio was playing something I didn't know. Some country station from somewhere, the kind that fades in and out as you move between the range of one transmitter and the next. I didn't mind that either. There's something about a half-familiar radio in a car at dusk that suits the mood. It isn't trying to entertain you. It's just there, filling in the space that silence would otherwise make conspicuous. I thought about the presentation as I drove. The layouts we'd done, careful things, all of them, set by hand with a light table and an X-Acto knife and wax on the back of the type. You wouldn't know, looking at the finished piece, all the small decisions that went into it. The tracking between letters, the weight of a rule, the choice of a typeface that suited what the client was trying to say about themselves without their knowing how the choice was being made. That's most of design, when it's done right. The client shouldn't notice it. They should just feel it. Feel that something is right about the thing they're looking at, without being able to say exactly why. I liked that work. I want to be clear about that. I was good at it, and I liked it, and I came home most evenings satisfied in the quiet way that good work satisfied you. Not exhilarated, not proud in any loud way. Just the day had added up to something. I could see it. That was enough. And then I saw the sign. It was hand-lettered on a piece of dark wood, nailed to a post at the side of the road. Not fancy about it. Done with care, you could see that in the evenness of the letters, the patience in them. But by a practical hand, rather than an artistic one, white paint on dark wood, Cutler's Cafe. 2 miles. That was all it said. No arrow, though the road curved left about 100 yards ahead and the direction was implied. No description of what kind of cafe, no phone number, no hours of operation, no invitation or inducement, just the name and the distance and nothing more than that. I don't know why I turned. I had food at home and the drive was only a few hours and I wasn't especially hungry yet. But something about that sign, the plainness of it, the confidence of it, 2 words and a number and not one thing extra, made me want to see what was at the end of it. It had the quality of a sign that assumed you'd know what to do with the information. And I found that I did. So I turned. The road off the main highway was narrower, 1 lane wide in most places, with spots here and there where it widened just enough for 2 cars to pass each other if they were paying attention. The asphalt was old and had been patched in a few places, pale gray patches on darker gray, the way roads piece themselves back together over the years, a little at a time. Dry grass grew close on both shoulders. A fence ran along the right side for a while, old cedar posts and rusted wire. There were no other cars, no houses visible, just the road and the grass and the fence and the sky doing its thing overhead. I drove those 2 miles slowly. The light was getting lower now, going from amber to something deeper, and the shadows from the fence posts were long across the road. A hawk sat on one of the posts and watched me pass without any particular interest, the way hawks do. They have a look of having seen everything before and found most of it unsurprising. A stand of trees appeared on the left, cottonwoods maybe, or something in that family, their leaves already gone, just the skeleton of them reaching up against the sky. They looked like they were in the middle of saying something they hadn't finished yet. And then the road curved gently, and there it was. Cutler's Cafe sat low to the ground, the way buildings do when they've been there long enough to stop announcing themselves. The walls were sandstone, a warm reddish tan, almost the same color as the dry grass that grew up around the foundation, as if whoever built the place had wanted it to look like it grew there, rather than was put there, which it did. It looked like it had always been there, like the road had come along later and organized itself around it, and not the other way around. The roof was low and flat in front, with a slight pitch toward the back. A wooden overhang ran the length of the facade, held up by 2 posts, casting a strip of shadow over the door and the 2 windows on either side of it. The windows were lit from inside, warm yellow light, the steady kind, the kind that looks like it comes from somewhere old that isn't going anywhere in a hurry. There was a sign above the door, metal, once white, now the color of old cream. Cutler's Cafe in letters that had been there long enough to feel permanent. And above and to the left, the neon sign. Cutler's Cafe in red neon with a small coffee cup beside it. The R in Cutler blinked every few seconds. Not dark, not broken enough for that, but not steady either. Just blinking, patient and slow, like it had been doing it for years and found it no great burden. One vehicle in the lot, besides mine. An old green pickup truck parked close to the building the way working trucks park. Close and practical, no extra steps. I pulled in beside it and turned off the engine and sat for a moment. The quiet out there was something I noticed right away. Not the quiet of emptiness, a different kind, quiet with texture to it. The wind moving through the dry grass along the edge of the lot made a low sound like something breathing steadily. Somewhere not too far off, a bird was calling, one of those that stays late into the fall, or maybe stays all year, I couldn't tell you which. And the neon sign made a faint buzzing sound, the kind you only hear once everything else has stopped. I got out of the car. The air was cooler now that the sun was lower, a real bite to it, the honest autumn cold, and it hit my face first, and then I could smell it, coming right through the walls of that building. Coffee and something savory with onions and something sweet from a pie case, all of it layered into that particular smell that only exists in diners that have been cooking the same things for a very long time. It's not something you can manufacture in a newer place. It takes years. It takes decades of the same grill, the same coffee, the same pies, the same hands making them. I went inside. The bell above the door was small, and its ring was modest, just a quiet announcement, not a demand. The floor was black and white tile, worn smooth along the paths that people walked most often, from the door to the counter, from the counter to the kitchen, back. There were 4 counter stools with red vinyl seats, all of them empty. 3 booths along the far wall, window booths, red vinyl benches to match. 2 empty. In the third, the one farthest from the door, an older man sat with a plate in front of him, and a newspaper folded down to a quarter of its size. Working through both of them in the unhurried way of someone who had nowhere to be that evening that mattered more than right there. He didn't look up when I came in. The pie case was right up front, the way it should be in a good diner. Glass front, lit from inside. 3 pies, or portions of pies. Cherry, what looked like pecan, and apple. The apple was down to about a third of itself. The kind of pie that doesn't try to be anything other than what it is. Behind the counter, at the far end near the pass-through to the kitchen, a woman was refilling a napkin holder. She was maybe 45, maybe 50. Dark hair pulled back, a few threads of gray starting in it. Work-worn hands, the kind that have done the same tasks so many times they've developed their own opinions. She wore a plain white apron over a dark blouse, and she moved with the particular economy of someone who has done the same tasks in the same space for a very long time, and no longer has to think about any of it. The motion is inside her, the way muscle memory gets inside you, below the level of thought. She looked up when the bell rang. Not a smile exactly, an acknowledgement. "You're here. That's fine." I sat at the counter, one stool from the end nearest the door. She came over with the menu, a single laminated card, front and back, and set it in front of me, set down a mug without being asked, and filled it from the pot she was carrying. The coffee was hot, and she poured it with the practiced confidence of someone who has filled 10,000 mugs and never thought about it once. "Be with you in just a minute," she said. Not an apology, information. I looked at the menu for the form of it. Blue plate special, roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, a roll, pie, coffee. That was all I needed to know, really. She came back. I ordered the blue plate. She wrote it down with a short pencil, went to the pass-through, and put the ticket up, exchanged a few quiet words with whoever was in the kitchen, and then went back to what she'd been doing at the far end of the counter, some restocking, some quiet tidying. She left me to the coffee. The kitchen was visible through the pass-through, not all of it, just enough to see that someone was back there, moving deliberately, doing what needed doing without rush. The man in the booth turned a page of his newspaper. The neon sign buzzed faintly through the window. The coffee was strong and plain and didn't apologize for itself, which I appreciated considerably. I want to tell you something about the quality of the quiet inside that place, because it was particular. A lot of places are quiet, but their silence has an anxious quality to it, like the room is waiting for something to happen, holding itself slightly tense. This was different. This was the quiet of a room that had been there a long time and knew what it was. No ambitions beyond itself. No performance for anyone who happened to be inside it. I've sat in a lot of diners over the years. You do when you drive for work. Most of them have a transit quality. You can feel that everyone in them is on their way to somewhere else, and this room is a pause in a longer trip. This felt different. This room felt like someone's life was happening in it, like someone's life had always been happening in it, and would go on happening, whether there were customers or not. The food came out steady and plain, roast beef that had been cooking long enough to be genuinely tender without becoming a mystery. Mashed potatoes still warm all the way through, green beans with a little bacon in them, the kind that have been on the stove long enough to have given up any argument. A roll wrapped in a paper napkin. I ate slowly. I usually eat too fast, a habit from too many years of lunches at the desk, but something about that room slowed me down. There was no reason to rush. The food was good, and I was alone at the counter, and the light outside was going from orange to purple to something richer and darker, and rushing would have been beside the point. It would have been rude to the room, in a way I can't quite explain. I ate. I drank my coffee. I looked around and took stock of the place the way I always did in those days, out of professional habit, the craft of it, the tile floor worn smooth in the walking paths, the counter itself, an old one, heavy and solid, with the same slight roll in the laminate at the far edge that you saw in counters of that era, installed once and never quite replaced. The stools with their worn red vinyl, the pie case lit up, the pass-through to the kitchen with its little service bell that nobody had rung. the walls of sandstone, and the way the mortar between the stones had been done carefully, with attention. Someone had taken real care with those walls. You could see it in the evenness of the work, the patience of it. I thought about what it meant to build something with your own hands. I was a man who worked with paper and light tables and small, careful tools. The things I made were flat. They were printed and mailed and eventually thrown away. The walls of this building had been there since 1939, and they would be there long after any piece of paper I'd ever set type on had turned to nothing. That's not a complaint about my work, just an observation. Some things last in different ways. There's a particular color that old sandstone goes in lamplight. Not quite gold, not quite tan. Something between the two, warm and deep, like something that has been absorbing heat and light for decades and has learned to hold it. I sat at that counter and looked at those walls and thought, whoever built this knew what they were doing. Not in an artistic sense necessarily. In the older sense, the sense of a craftsman who understood the materials and respected them and let them do what they were meant to do. That's rarer than it sounds. Most building is about imposing something. This felt like listening. The man in the booth finished his supper eventually. He folded his newspaper twice, tucked it under his arm, rose slowly, the way older men rise when their joints have opinions about it. He came up to the counter to settle his bill. He and the woman exchanged a few quiet words, the familiar words of people who have known each other for years and don't need to fill the air with extra ones. He paid. He said good night to her by name. Darlene, he called her. She said good night back and thanked him by name in return. He put on his hat and went out. The bell rang its modest ring, and then there was just me. She came over and refilled my coffee without asking, set the pot on the counter, and leaned against it the way a person leans when they've been on their feet all day and have earned 30 seconds to stop. Long drive? She said. Few hours, I said. Had a meeting in the city, heading back now. She nodded slowly. What kind of work? Print shop. I'm a designer. We do layouts mostly. Brochures, advertising materials, that sort of thing. She seemed to find that reasonable. Took a moment to look at it from some angle. People still need those, she said. For now, I said. I'm not sure why I said that. I wasn't thinking about anything particular. The words just arrived. She didn't push on it. She looked out the window at the road outside, where the last of the daylight was finishing. Most people take the interstate now, she said. Not a complaint. A fact, said the way facts are said when you've had a long time to get used to them. I know it, I said. I used to come this way more often. It's been a while. It's been a while for a lot of people, she said. And after a pause that was neither sad nor resigned, but simply honest. Still a pretty road, though, if you're not in a hurry. I agreed that it was. We didn't say much for a few minutes after that. She went back to the work of closing. Not rushed, not slow, just steady. And I finished my supper and had another cup of coffee and watched the last light go out of the sky through the diner window. There's something about watching the evening finish from inside a warm room that has always settled something in me. The outside does what it does, and you're just there observing it, safe and warm and fed, with nowhere you have to be. Then I asked her about the building. It's a habit I've had for a long time, coming from the print business, noticing how things are put together, the materials, what it took to make something look the way it looks. The sandstone walls had caught my attention when I pulled in. You don't see many buildings made from local stone that way, pulled directly from the land around them. There's a particular quality to it. The building looks like it belongs to the place, rather than having been delivered to it and set down. She looked at the wall the way you look at something you've been looking at your whole life and mostly stopped registering. "My father built it," she said. 1939. He was 30 years old. The stone came from the creek bed about 2 miles east of here. He and 2 other men did the hauling. Took most of the summer. "That's a serious undertaking," I said. "He was a serious man when he needed to be," she said. "Cheerful otherwise." "Is he still around?" "He is. His knees gave out about 8 years ago, so I took over the running of it. But he comes in most mornings, sits in that corner booth." She nodded toward the booth. "Drinks his coffee, doesn't say much, just likes to be here." I thought about that for a moment. A man who built something with his own hands, who hauled the stone himself from a creek 2 miles away, and then, when his body wouldn't let him run it any more, just came and sat in it. Just to be near what he'd made. "That's a good thing," I said. "It is," she said. Simply, without any decoration. Her name was Darlene Cutler. She'd grown up in this cafe, done her homework at that corner booth, knew every customer by name for a long time, years and years of names, until the names started changing and then thinning out. The road had been a different road when she was small. I asked her if she'd always planned to take over. "No," she said, without any particular weight to it. "I had ideas about going to the city when I was young. I went, actually. I was 22. I lasted about a year." "What brought you back?" "My father needed help," she said, "and I missed this." She looked around the room, missed the smell of it, missed knowing every crack in that floor, missed the way the light comes through those windows in the morning, early, before it gets high enough to be in your eyes. Some people are made for somewhere. I think I'm made for here. She said it with the simplicity of a person who has thought something through a long time ago and arrived at a conclusion and stopped arguing with it. She went about closing the way a person goes about something they've done 10,000 times. There is a particular kind of competence in that, not the flashy kind, not the kind that announces itself, the quiet kind that shows in the absence of wasted motion. She knew exactly how long each thing took. She knew where everything lived. She moved through the room like she and the room had a long-standing agreement about how things went. She wiped down the counter in long, even strokes. She paired up the salt and pepper shakers, wiping their bases. She organized things at the far end. Napkins, menus, the things that needed their places restored. She went to the pass-through and said a few words to whoever was in the kitchen. Whoever it was said a few words back. The kitchen sounds changed after that, from the sound of things being cooked to the sound of things being cleaned and put away, a different and quieter rhythm. I sat at the counter and watched her work and found myself in no hurry to leave. That surprised me a little. I'm not typically a lingerer. I tend to get where I'm going and move on. But there was something about that room, the pie case and the worn tile and the neon sign blinking through the window and the low sandstone walls, that made leaving feel wrong, like I'd be walking away from something I'd only just found. I noticed, watching her work, that she never stopped moving and never wasted a motion, and never seemed to be in any particular hurry about any of it. There's a specific pleasure in watching a person who is completely at home in their work. No self-consciousness, no audience, just the thing and the person doing it, and the years of practice that had made the two of them one smooth operation. I thought about the pressmen at the shop, the ones who had been running the same presses for 20 or 30 years, who knew the sound of them the way you know a voice, who could hear a problem coming before the equipment showed any outward sign of it. That same quality, something earned, not claimed. At some point, she stopped at the pie case. "One piece of apple left," she said. Not quite an offer, more like a statement of the situation as it stood. "I'll take it," I said. She cut it and brought it on a white plate. The apple pie was exactly what it looked like. Honest, unhurried, the kind that has nothing to prove. The apples were soft and the cinnamon was present without insisting on it. The crust was done right, not too thick, the edges crimped the old way. I ate it slowly because it deserved that. She poured herself something and came and sat down on the stool 2 down from mine, and we talked for a while. The easy kind of talk that happens when the day has wound down and there's no pressure on the conversation. You can say what's actually on your mind or say nothing at all, and both are equally fine. She told me about the road, not mournfully. I want to be clear about that. She wasn't that kind of person. She was a practical woman with clear eyes who had been looking at the same thing for a long time and had worked out how to see it honestly. She talked about it the way people talk about things when they've had enough time to stop being sentimental and arrive somewhere truer. The road had been busy when she was young, really busy. The kind of busy her father had built for, had bet his savings and his summer hauling stone on. Families heading west to California, heading back east, truckers on long hauls, salesmen, all manner of people moving in all directions on that one long road. Her father had kept the place open around the clock for a stretch in the late 50s, 3 shifts, every stool taken most of the time. She had a childhood memory of falling asleep upstairs to the sound of the place, the murmur of conversation from below, the scrape of a chair, the bell above the door, the coffee pots. She'd fallen asleep to that sound most of her life. And then the interstate went in, she said. She said it without inflection, a fact of geography, like saying the river shifted course or the weather changed. The traffic moved. The road went quiet. The world reorganized itself around the new highway, and most of what had been along 66 between the two cities got left behind. Not all at once. It happened slowly enough that you could see it coming, slowly enough that you could almost convince yourself each year that it had finished, that this was the new normal, and things would hold here, and then the next year it would be a little quieter again. "A lot of places closed," she said, "all up and down the road. You drive it now, you still see the buildings sometimes, empty ones, windows gone, signs still up." I had seen a few of those on the drive in, the shells of old filling stations, old motels. Their signs faded to almost nothing, no movement behind the glass. "Did you think about closing?" I asked. She considered it the way someone considers a question they've already settled a long time ago. "Sure," she said. "Around 74 the numbers were bad. Stayed bad for a couple of years." She looked around the room. "But my father built this with his hands. He hauled the stone. He was 30 years old, and he figured Route 66 wasn't going anywhere." She gave that the small smile it deserved. He was right about it for a long time. What changed your mind about staying? I'm not sure anything changed it, she said. I just kept deciding the same way, every year. And then one day, it had been 20 years, and it didn't seem like a decision anymore. It just seemed like what was true. She said a lot of the regulars had held on, farmers and their families from the county, people from the small towns within driving distance, folks who'd been coming in since before she was born. They came on the same days, ordered the same things, sat in the same spots. They weren't glamorous or romantic about it. They just came because they always had, and because the coffee was the same as it had always been, and the pie was the same, and some things are worth the drive. The grill's still the original, she said. My father's grill, 1939, still works. She seemed to find this both ordinary and slightly astonishing in equal measure. I've had people come in and ask to see it just to see it. People who know about old equipment. They get very interested. What do they say about it? They say they don't make them like that anymore. She smiled a little. Which is true, but it's also just a grill. You feed it, you clean it, you maintain it. Any piece of equipment will last if you do that. Then she was quiet for a moment, and I thought she might be done with it. And then she said, "Except it's not just a grill, is it? It's my father at 30 years old deciding something and meaning it. Every meal that's come off that grill since 1939. She paused. I don't know. Maybe it is just a grill. But I didn't think so either. And then she told me about the people from California. She mentioned them near the end of the evening, when we were both toward the bottom of our cups, and the closing was mostly done. A group had come through, she said, some years back. 7 or 8 of them, maybe more. All of them from California. They'd rented cars and driven the whole road, or a long portion of it, and they were interested in everything. The building, the stonework, the history of the place, how long the grill had been there, and whether it still worked, and what kind of food had come off it over the years. They'd asked her a lot of questions, good questions, patient ones, the kind from people who actually want the answer and are willing to wait for it. She'd sat with a couple of them right here at this counter and talked for an hour, maybe more. Some of them had brought sketchbooks. They'd drawn the interior of the cafe, drawn the exterior, gone outside and drawn the building from the lot in the late afternoon light. One of them, she said, had sat right where I was sitting and ordered the same blue plate and eaten slowly, and asked her what she remembered about the road at its busiest. She'd told him about the sound of it at night, the way she used to be able to hear from upstairs, the particular different sounds of different kinds of traffic, the heavy rumble of the semis, the lighter sound of family cars, the motorcycles, which came in waves, clusters of them, always slightly ahead of something or slightly behind it. She'd never forgotten how to tell them apart just by sound. She'd told him that, and he wrote it down. She'd never been asked that before and hasn't been asked it since. What were they working on? I asked. Something to do with the road, she said, with places like this one. They were interested in the character of things. That's the word one of them used. The character. What makes a place what it is? She thought about it. They were very polite, genuine, not just going through motions. I offered them the pie. They all had some. Did they say what it was for? What would come of it? Not exactly. Something, a project, I think. Maybe a book. Maybe something else. I don't know. She turned her cup on the counter. I've thought about them since, wondered if anything came of it, if anyone ever saw whatever they made and didn't know there was an afternoon in Oklahoma in it somewhere. A piece of apple pie and a grill from 1939, and a woman who couldn't tell them much except that her father built it and she stayed. I told her I hoped something had come of it. She said she hoped so too. Said it simply, not with any investment in it one way or the other. Just, I hope so. But anyway, where was I? She stood and took both our cups to the sink, and I understood that was the last of it, the end of the evening. I put on my jacket and picked up my portfolio and stood at the end of the counter for a moment. She came around from behind the counter, not to see me out, just finishing the last of the closing, but she stopped near the door. "You drive safe now," she said. "The road gets dark fast out here. Keep your eyes open." "I will," I said. And then, because it was true, and I meant it, "Your father built something worth keeping." She looked at me for a moment, not surprised, more like she was deciding something, whether to answer that or just let it sit there between us. "I know it," she said, quietly. "The way you say something you've known for a long time. The way you say something that has been both a comfort and a weight, and you've made your peace with the fact that they come together." I went out. The bell rang. The air was fully cold now, the real autumn cold that doesn't apologize. The sky overhead was enormous and dark and crowded with stars in the way it only gets out in the open, far from the lights of anywhere. I stood by my car for a moment and looked up. Then I looked back at the cafe, the low sandstone building, the lit windows, the neon sign with the blinking R, and I felt something I didn't have an exact name for then and don't have an exact name for now. Something about the distance between what gets built and what survives, about the people who decide to stay in one place while the world reorganizes itself around them, what it costs them, what they find on the other side of that cost, about a man at 30 years old hauling stone from a creek bed because he thought the road wasn't going anywhere, about a woman who came back at 22 and put on the apron and has been here every morning since, about a grill that still works, about people from California sitting at this counter with their sketchbooks, trying to understand the character of things. I got in the car. I sat there for a moment. Then I drove back toward the highway. Cutler's got small in the rearview mirror, and then it was gone, behind the curve of the road and the dark. The highway picked me up, and I was moving at speed again. Other cars, headlights, the radio on low, the regular world coming back around me. The country station was gone, replaced by something else, whatever the next transmitter was offering. I let it play. I wasn't really listening to it anyway. I drove through the dark and thought about Darlene Cutler, about the choice she'd made and kept making every morning, about her father in that corner booth, not saying much, just wanting to be near the thing he'd built, about the way she'd said, "I know it," not defensively, not proudly, just with the clean certainty of someone who has been tested on something and came through with the answer intact. It's a particular kind of peace, that. Not the peace of someone who has given up on something, but the peace of someone who has settled something permanently in their own mind and doesn't need to keep revisiting it. I've met a few people in my life who had it. They were always the same, quiet, practical, not especially interested in impressing anyone. They just knew what they were and where they were and what they were going to do tomorrow morning. I thought about what I did for a living, the paste up, the mechanicals, the long, careful work, What that work would look like in 10 years, 20. The world was already making some of it easier, which meant some of it was going to disappear. New tools were coming. I could feel it without knowing exactly what they'd be. The tools change, and the skills required change with them, and some things that took years to learn become obsolete, and you have to decide what you are when the thing you were good at isn't quite as necessary anymore. I knew that was coming. I'd known it in a general way for a while. Driving back through that dark Oklahoma night, with Cutler's still somewhere behind me on the smaller road, I felt it in a more personal way. "For now," I said in that diner. And I meant it. But here's the thing I kept coming back to on that drive. Darlene Cutler hadn't outlasted the change by fighting it or denying it, or even by being especially clever about it. She'd outlasted it by simply being what she was, day after day, with the same coffee and the same grill and the same pie case in the same building that her father's hands had set stone by stone in the summer of 1939. She hadn't reinvented herself. She just kept being herself, with complete fidelity, until the world circled back around and found something in it to value. I'm not sure that's a lesson I fully absorbed then. I was too young for it, maybe. But I've thought about it since. More than once. Some things you build last. Some things last because you tend them and maintain them and get up every morning and decide again that they're worth your time. And some things just don't, no matter what you do. That's the plain truth of it, and it doesn't have a lesson attached to it. It's just what's true. I still think about Darlene Cutler sometimes. When I'm on a long drive in the fall and the light goes orange and I pass a sign by the road for somewhere I've never been. 2 words and a distance and nothing extra. I think she'd take the long way. She'd stop. She'd sit at the counter and be in the room and let the evening do what it does. And then, when I'm not in too much of a hurry, I do too. Some things stay put. Not because they're stubborn, or not only because of that, but because they found their place in the world and they stopped moving, and the world went on past them for a while, and then circled back around to find them still there, right where they'd been. It doesn't make speeches about itself. There's no trumpet for the cafe that keeps its lights on when the road goes quiet. There's just the light in the window, and the coffee on the original grill, and the pie case with what's left of the apple, and the woman who gets up every morning and unlocks the door. Darlene Cutler made her choice at 22, went to the city, came back, put on the apron, and then she made that same choice again every morning after that. Not dramatically, not with any great announcement, just, here is the key, here is the door, here is the grill that still works. Most choices are like that, I think. Not one big irreversible one, just the same small one made again and again, quietly, without applause. The accumulation of all those small choices is what a life is. The night has a little of that quality too. It doesn't arrive all at once. It just keeps coming, steady and unhurried, the same as it always was. Patient with you. Not asking anything. You don't have to be anywhere tonight. Nothing is required of you now. Just let the dark do what it does, and let yourself go with it. There's no hurry. There never was, really. Well, That's about all from me tonight. You just close your eyes now. Don't worry about what's coming tomorrow. It'll sort itself out, same as it always does. You did good today. Sweet dreams now. I'll be right here.